Before I share this morning's reading, friends, I need to ask your forgiveness. I am breaking in a new pair of bifocals, or progressive lenses, and it's really hard for me to look at my notes and then look up at my screen back at all of you. And oh my Lord, I'm getting dizzy here. So just bear with me this morning. Oh Lord. Our reading this morning is called Testimony by Rebecca Baggett, and its dedication reads, "For my daughters. I want to tell you that the world is still beautiful. I tell you that despite children shot down in schoolrooms, despite the slow poisons seeping from old and hidden sins into our air, soil, water, despite the thinning film that encloses our aching world, despite my own terror and despair. I want you to look again and again, to recognize the tender grasses curled like a baby's fine hairs around your fingers as a recurring miracle, to see that the river rocks shine like God, that the crisp voices of the orange and gold October leaves are laughing at death. I want you to look beneath the grass to note the fragile hieroglyphs of ant, snail, beetle. I want you to understand that you are no more and no less necessary than the brown recluse, the ruby-throated hummingbird, the humpback whale, the profligate mimosa. I want to say, like Neruda, that I am waiting for a great and common tenderness, that I still believe we are capable of attention, and that anyone who notices the world must want to save it. In the late 19th century, the philosopher William James spoke words that are more true today than when he first uttered them. He said, "We live in a world that is uncertain of being saved." And then he posed a question to his listeners. He asked them, "Are you willing to participate in such a world? Are you willing to risk participating in a world whose salvation is uncertain?" Friends, we are more aware than ever now of the vulnerability of our world and the uncertainty of its salvation. People we love are at risk. The earth that we love and depend upon for our life is threatened. We live in a world uncertain of being saved, and it seems that we live, fortunately or not, precisely at the moment when the fate of the world's salvation will be decided. This is a really big deal. This is a lot for our spirits, our hearts, our minds to process and make sense of and feel. How do we live with purpose, hope, and joy in a precarious world? How do we avoid indulging escapist fantasies or apocalyptic nightmares? How do we resist withdrawing into cynicism, apathy, or the comfort of our own privilege? Bottom line, how do we live faithfully in the world today? I've been thinking a lot lately about how our faith, how our Unitarian Universalist faith equips us for life at such a time as this. And this morning, I want to share with you a threefold spiritual path for how we as progressive people of faith might participate with integrity and hope, power and joy in a world whose salvation is uncertain. It's a threefold path that begins with seeing the world as it really is, in its beauty and its brokenness, savoring the world, taking delight in it, and finally working together to repair or save the world. See, savor, save. That's the path I want to lay out for us this morning. See, savor, and save. The first thing we must do when living in a world on the brink is to see that world, to see it for what it really is, its beauty and its brokenness. As we discussed last week, Unitarian Universalism is a faith that invites us to focus our spiritual attention and energy on the here and now, not the by and by. To that end, our faith invites us to value and cultivate and trust all of our senses: sight, taste, smell, touch, sound. Because our senses help us experience and know the world as it truly is. This teaching has never been so important as it is now, for we live in an age when some among us deliberately spin lies into alternate realities, and when many among us are distracted by so-called virtual realities. It's our trusty senses that call us back from the lies and distractions and allow us to focus on reality itself. It's our senses that help us know the difference between reality and its pretenders. We know it because we can see it and smell it and taste it and touch it and hear it. Let all who have eyes see, Jesus once told his followers, and let all who have ears hear. He was saying to them, wake up, because there's some stuff going down in the world that you need to notice and know about. Some awful stuff and some beautiful stuff. Pay attention to all of it. That's the least we owe this precarious world that we're living in. In our reading this morning, the poet Rebecca Baggett makes a similar plea to her daughters. She too asks them to see the world. And in particular, she wants them to notice the beauty amidst all the brokenness. Notice first the grass, she says, curled between your fingers. Notice too the fragile hieroglyphs of ant, snail, and beetle hidden beneath the grass. I want to tell you that the world is a beautiful place, she writes, but in order for you to believe it, you've got to see it for yourselves. There's urgency here in the mother's tone, as if she's afraid of losing her daughters and even herself maybe to despair and cynicism. And she knows that the only antidote to this despair is for her daughters and for her to lavish loving attention on the world, to see the world, but not only see it, to savor it. The poet's advice to her daughters is similar to that of our own religious ancestors. They had a practice of taking time at the end of each day to reflect back on the day and ask themselves this question: where was the holy present today? Where did I notice glimmers of grace, beauty, love? What they were doing was training their senses to be on the lookout for such signs. They were reminding themselves to savor the world, because to fail to do so, they believed, would be the height of ingratitude. Friends, I think we would do well to heed the advice of the poet and of our ancestors. In a world on the brink, there will be times when we need to walk ourselves back from the edge of despair and cynicism or apathy by noticing enough beauty in the world that we can keep on loving it, and one another too. You know, I'm reminded of some advice given to me by a mentor when I was first getting started in the ministry. He said to me, Rob, to be a Unitarian Universalist is to see the world as it is and to see the world as it should be and to love them both. Let me say that again. To see the world as it is and to see the world as it should be, and somehow, to love them both. Don't forsake this world, he was saying. Don't have contempt for it. Have compassion for it, even as you critique it. Find in it beauty and joy, even as you work toward a dream of more justice and more love. In other words, see and savor the world, even as you work to savor it. To see and savor the world, even as you work to save it. You know, I learned a long time ago that movements for justice that are grounded in contempt for the world will fail. And on this, I can speak from experience. You know, as a gay man who came of age at the height of the US AIDS epidemic, I've been an advocate for LGBTQ equality for more than 20 years. And for the most part, I've taken up that work out of a sense of love for my LGBTQ community. So much of the love in my life is thanks to that community. And being gay has been such a blessing to me. Coming out gave me back my self-respect. It gave me my partner whom I love and now a son whom I adore. And in my best moments, it's this love and gratitude that have fueled my work for justice and equality. But I'll tell you, there were times in the struggle when my motivations were less honorable. If I'm honest with you, there were times when I allowed my fear of, or even my hatred of those who opposed LGBTQ equality, I allowed that to become the driving factor in my work. For me, that shift in motivation had dire but predictable consequences. With love no longer at the center of my work for justice, I felt angry, tired, and burnt out. And I'll tell you, I've been around enough progressive movements to know that I am not the only one who succumbed to this temptation. Perhaps you've noticed contempt for others slipping into your own work for justice and equality. It happens. So what I've come to believe, friends, is that if our work for justice isn't grounded in love for real people, love for the world and for the many blessings of life, then it simply won't succeed. The author E.B. White once wrote, "Each morning I wake up torn between two impulses. The impulse to savor the world and the impulse to save it." And then he added, "It makes it hard to plan my day." I'll bet many of us have felt torn by this choice. Do I pause to savor life's blessings, or do I leap to the barricades to fight the good fight? But the point I've been driving at this morning, friends, is that this is a false choice, because we've got to do both. We must both savor and save the world, for the two are inextricably linked. Savoring elicits from us a gratitude and love for the world that in turn sustains our efforts to save it. I mean, think about it. Why would you bother saving a planet whose beauty and grandeur you had not delighted in? Why would you bother saving a human race whose members you don't love? So see, savor, and save. To see means to awaken our senses to the present moment, to see through the deception and distraction and glimpse the world as it is, beautiful and broken. Then, with our senses awakened, we can savor the world, lavishing upon it our loving attention and gratitude. And if we allow that love and gratitude to guide our work for justice, then we can indeed help save the world. See, savor, and save. There's just one final thought I want to share, though. This spiritual path that I've outlined this morning, it's not one that we can walk on our own. I believe that to follow this path requires that we be part of a spiritual community. Why? For me, it's simple. It's because the world is too beautiful to praise with just one voice. And it's too broken to save with just one pair of hands. That's why we need one another. We need choirs and joyful hymns and calls and responses, because the world is too beautiful to praise with just one voice. And we need to pray together and march together and organize together, because the world is too broken to save with our pair of hands. We need one another now more than ever. You know, William James may be right that we live in a world uncertain of being saved. But I believe this: it is more certain of being saved, because week after week, we accompany one another through our joys and sorrows, bearing witness to both the beauty and pain of the world. It is more certain of being saved because we sing out praises on Sunday morning, savoring life's blessings. And it is more certain of being saved because we link arms with one another to work for justice. And as to that question that William James asks of us, are you willing to participate in a world whose salvation is uncertain? Well, as long as I have communities like this that remind me to see and savor the world, And as long as I have people like you with whom I can work to save it, then I know what my answer is. Yes, I am willing. Yes, with all my life. Yes. Amen.